Good evening. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Garrick?
Here.
Pepcorn?
Here.
Preston? Here. Strand? Here. Mahoney?
Yes. Health, Fargo Cass Public Health will host a walk-in flu shot clinic November 20th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Receiving an annual flu shot is the best protection against influenza virus this year, and the flu shot is even more important because of the pandemic COVID virus. Appointments are not necessary, but residents should bring Medicare or health insurance information to the clinic. Library. Due to the rising number of COVID-19 cases in the community, all Fargo Public Library buildings are closed to walk-in traffic, and curbside pickup service will be offered until further notice. Curbside pickup hours are 10 to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. All library locations are closed on Sunday. Planning. Broadway Square in front of Block 9 building in downtown Fargo will open just in time for the holidays with a tree lighting and a rink ribbon skate through on December 3rd at 5 p.m. Masks are required. Free daily skating will be available starting December 4th, and the Skate Shack will offer skate rental, skate sharpening, and concessions. All winter amenities will become available through December, including interactive holiday tree, fire pits, Broadway Square merchandise, warming igloos, and programmed events. All December events at Broadway Square are free. This is going to be the new public space. The park board is going to be managing it, and we have a great manager that's doing a great job on that. So please participate if you can on Broadway Square with spacing available. Thanks. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda adding item 34, which Arlette Preston wants a discussion about public comment?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 2nd, 2020 regular meeting?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say nay. Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 26? Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston? Yes. Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Regular agenda, construction update. Brenda Derrick to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I am here before you today to give you an update on our wrap-up of our construction season this year. One of the exciting things I think we did last year is we got ahead of our projects, and we worked with consultants to get them bid early enough. And so as we go through the photos, you're going to see a lot of green grass, which has been exciting. We've been able to get out there, we were able to start construction early and get things accomplished so we could get some of that green grass established. I'd like to start out that we've got 3 different sites that you can keep up with our projects on over the summer: our Twitter site, our Facebook, and then our fargostreets.com. Our projects are either complete or finishing up. We had 31 projects this year and $62 million in construction costs, and there have been no safety incidents this year. So one of our projects, we'll start with Main Avenue here. We completed the section from Broadway to University Drive. In 2019, we were able to complete the 2nd Street to Broadway, so this completes that section from the river all the way to University. 7th Avenue North, we completed the reconstruction from 2nd Street to Broadway, and we will be working 2021, we'll be working on 7th Avenue from Broadway to University Drive. We also had a reconstruction project on 3rd Avenue North and 11th and 12th Street. And then we also did a reconstruction project on 10th Street from 19th Avenue North to 28th Avenue North. Here you're looking at a reconstruction project on 17th Street, and then we did a mill and overlay on 25th Avenue. And within this project, we also added a larger storm sewer pipe to help support the reconstruction of 21st Avenue, which is kind of that frontage road along I-94 there. Currently, it has no storm sewer, so this project also helped get ready to be able to add storm sewer and reconstruct that project in 2021. This is 64th Avenue South before we did any of the reconstruction project. And this is the same location after we've improved and urbanized that roadway section. So this is looking east. You can see 64th Avenue reconstruction. We also are doing drain 53 improvements. We're deepening and widening the drain. Up on the further side, you can see the Golden Valley addition. And then Selkirk addition, which was installed privately in 2019 and 2020. And then the lift station project that we've been working on. This is a look of this area looking north in the fall of 2019. You can see where the Golden Valley wording is, the Legacy and Madeline Meadows. And this is what it looks like in 2020. You can see the road network that's been installed over this construction season. And then this is the new Valley View Estates, which is just west of 45th Street and along 36th Avenue South. And then this is the new 38th Street, which is just south of Walmart, and that will connect into our 64th Avenue South project and overpass. And then this would be our new development up north, the 44th Avenue, where the Amazon project will be going. They are doing the construction of 44th Avenue North privately. Next year, we will have some infrastructure construction that will support this development also. And just to kind of give you an idea of the magnitude, that little square block are the backhoes working in there, which kind of puts in perspective the size of that project. And then this is the Lindenwood flood protection project that was completed this year. The flood wall was completed last year, and then the levee work this year. And then this is the north side flood protection project. This is the work we're doing along the drain, but that's the project that will tie into the lagoons up north and provide that protection on the north side of town. And then some of the other projects that's hard to get some pictures of is, we've also doing crack seal, seal coat. We have our concrete repair projects, mill and overlay wear course, streetlight rehab, signal, some of our new street lighting rehab. And then we've been doing some flood buyout demolition along with our storm sewer repairs, our alley paving, and then we always have our sidewalk projects that consist of rehab. So rehabilitation of existing sidewalk or the installation of new sidewalk where it hasn't been installed yet. And then just to give you guys a heads up, we're hoping in 2 weeks that we'll be in front of you with our capital improvement plan, our proposed capital improvement plan for 2021 and start going through the presentation for that. Are there any questions?
Any questions, any of the commissioners?
Thank you very much.
Good report. Looks like you guys made great progress and we're on time ahead of budget, right?
It was a good construction season this year. So thank you.
Thank you. Not quite ready for public hearing. We'll go to item 29, recommendation for a pre-disaster mitigation program sub-grant agreement. Dan Portlock to explain or Bruce Grubb to explain?
You get Bruce Grubb tonight, I apologize, but Troy Hall is not able to be here tonight, so I offered to stand in for him on this one. But this item is related to a FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grant that we were awarded recently for a flood protection project at the Red River Pump Station. Back in 2017 at the November 2nd city commission meeting, we were given approval to submit a grant application to this program. And then at the same time, the commission also approved a commitment to the local cost share if we were successful in getting that grant. Well, the good news is we were notified recently by the North Dakota Department of Emergency Services that we had been approved for that FEMA grant. And so tonight what we're asking for, one of the last things we need to do is approve the acceptance agreement. These things are covered with a lot of red tape, but they're very worthwhile. So if you can bear with me, a little bit of background to this. That pump station was originally constructed in 1995 as part of the new water treatment plant construction at that time. I was around, and it was really striking to me that that was 25 years ago. Time really flies. But it is the main water supply pumping station because annually we get most of our water out of the Red River. And because of regionalization efforts, that pumping station does need a capacity increase. The problem is the location of the pump station is in conflict with the flood wall, our permanent line of protection down there. And moving the pump station is very problematic for the water utility. And you can kind of see that on this slide. If you look at that upper picture in the left right-hand portion of that photograph, you can see the flood wall has been constructed to that point. It needs to be extended further south, and obviously we've got a lift station that is in the way of that proceeding. So one of the other things in that lift station in terms of flood protection is the equipment inside the lift station is installed below the 100-year flood elevation. So we need to get that stuff elevated inside that existing station. So several meetings ago, you might recall this, Nathan Boerboom gave an update on in-town flood protection efforts. And one of the areas he talked about was the Belmont area down at the water treatment plant. This was the actual slide that Nathan used, and you can see that the phase 4 work that he identified is the work at the Red River Pump Station, and that is scheduled for next year, 2021. And that's what this grant is related to, flood protection efforts at the Red River Pump Station. So with a pump station that needs a capacity increase, those type of improvement, but that's in the way of permanent flood protection, the solution is a single project intended to accommodate both needs, both permanent flood protection and a pump station capacity increase. And the way that we're going to accomplish that is by incorporating the permanent flood wall right into that lift station, essentially running the flood wall through the pump station. So in effect, a single project to accomplish both permanent flood protection and an increase in pumping capacity for the water treatment plant. This is just kind of an interesting, I'm an engineer by trade, so I like colors and drawings, but you can see how we're going to accomplish that here. The blue flood wall starting on the left being constructed right through the lift station and exiting the right side of the drawing. What you see in front of the blue wall is a lift station capacity expansion, and so that's how we're going to accomplish that. And within that expansion, we'll install all the elevated electrical, chemical feed equipment, all those things above the 100-year flood elevation. So on the left side of this screen, the great thing about the pre-disaster mitigation program is it offers up to $4 million in grant funding per project, and that comes at a 75% federal, 25% local cost share. And so down below you can see the flood protection part of this project is $4.75 million. The 75-25 cost share leaves us with a local requirement of $1,188,322.50. So this really couldn't have worked out much better for us 2 years ago. We weren't anticipating this, but saw we had the opportunity to apply. We're successful in getting the grant, and so I've got on this screen the suggested motion tonight allowing us to accept that grant and proceed with that single dual-purpose project that really anxious to see completed.
Can I have a motion, please?
I move suggested.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner McGarrett?
Just want to say that the water utility and all the utilities do a really good job of going after these grants. Yes, it does take time and effort, but like this, you can see it really pays off, and it saved us, since I've been a commissioner, it saved us tens of millions of dollars with all the products we've done, and that's been really helpful.
Does it save money from the diversion as well? Would the diversion had to fund this otherwise?
Yeah, because it's a combined project and the grant is related to flood protection, we're getting a discount flood walls through that lift station. So great opportunity.
Very good. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Preston? Yes. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
No, yeah.
Thank you.
Go back to public hearing. Item 28A, amendments to the 2019 Action Plan Community Development Block Grant. Number 1, resolution approving amendments to the Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. Tia Braceth or no, Nicole Crutchfield?
We've got Tia on the phone in case I get stuck.
Oh, okay.
But yes, so in front of you tonight is another round of COVID CARES Act money that's been assigned to Community Development Block Grant. And so through a formulaic amount of money, the city has been allocated $580,000 and $116. And we'll be in front, it'll get a little confusing, but with these allocations, they're all assigned to 2019. The way CDBG works is you have to assign it to an action year, and through advisement from HUD, everything's been assigned to our 2019 year. And so that's why it looks a little funny, but today is a public hearing, so we're asking for if the public has any comments on these activities that we're adding for homeless prevention and family health care, as well as fair housing. All of these items are related to housing and homelessness and services provided. These are all been previous recipients related to this, and so we're just adding to that pool of funds as it relates to COVID issues. Be glad to answer any questions.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this new allocation? Is there anyone who wishes to speak about the amendment? If not, we'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Strand and Gehrig. Any other discussion? Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, I'm just curious, could you go a little further into what eviction prevention efforts might look like?
The with High Plains Fair Housing, is
Yeah.
that yeah, basically additional consultation and looking at helping residents understand or citizens understand that they are protected under declaration from CDC, and that the tenant has basically a burden to prove that they have sorry, I'm losing all my words and it's only Monday. Basically, tenants have a need to, if they're facing eviction, especially related to COVID and lost income, and if you make less than $99,000 a year as an individual, and I believe the number is $189,000, it's all in a CDC declaration. We're using High Plains Fair Housing to help share that information with their people that they come encounter with. We're finding many citizens don't know that, and landlords are not advocating for that. And so we're playing that, we're helping find people in our community to help provide that information.
And if I might, Mayor, continue, you touched on it exactly what I'm getting at. A lot of folks don't know this is out there for them to get help. And then some of the landlords may not know that we're able to help their tenants as well.
Correct.
So that's a great program. Thank you for sharing that more.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston? Yes. Mahoney?
Aye. Item 30, request for tax increment financing for the redevelopment of the Anderson Park softball complex. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. Our tax increment financing process is to first bring an application to you, really as an initial review to see if it's a type of project that you think you might support. Should you decide to have us go ahead with it, we would then devote staff time, legal time, and bring in our financial reviewer for this project. This particular location, it's a 16-acre site. It's part of the Anderson Park softball complex. The Park District has elected to sell this property for development, and Epic Development was the recommended purchaser of the property. I don't know if the purchase has been completed yet, but they're working on that. This particular request for tax increment financing, it's unique to the other applications that you've seen in the past. Often we're dealing with blighted conditions, poor soils, inadequate infrastructure, or some complication related to the land acquisition. We don't have any of those factors in this case. However, the state law does allow the creation of tax increment financing districts for industrial and commercial property. Really the choice here is, and I think the developer noted it in his request, is if they don't get the tax increment financing, they would still do $80 to $100 million worth of development. However, with the tax increment financing, that level of development would be higher, and they would include certain public facilities that would benefit the Park District and the community, including parking lots or a parking ramp and a parking garage. When we look at the state law, and it's not a kind of a blighted area, the amount and the uses of the money is more limited than we have had in other districts. And so it's really limited to public costs that help prepare the site for development. And those four factors are one, acquiring at market value, the property, so you can help pay for the acquisition costs of the property. Secondly, you can pay for costs of demolition, removal, or alteration of buildings. In this particular case, we don't have any of those costs. And so the uses of the money can only really be used for the installation, construction, and reconstruction of streets, utilities, parks, or other public works necessary to carry out the development. And then finally, just interest costs. I bring this up because I think it would be difficult to assist with affordable housing unless we go back and use some of the money to reacquire a portion of this site for affordable housing. They mentioned trying to help the zoo too, and unless there are these public costs, public facility costs, there would not be a way to help the zoo. And so I just want you to be aware of those limitations before we would start at anything. Be happy to answer any questions. However, I'd like to have the developer, Todd Burning, talk a little bit about the project, and he's also available for questions. If you have any questions for me, I can take those now.
Mr. Pipgrim.
So, Mr. Chair, so Jim, is this the initial, this is just the initial vote, and then if we approve it, it goes and gets financial review, then it comes right back to us, or is that?
Yeah, it would go to your tax increment review committee first with a recommendation, then back to the city commission.
Can I just add a couple of things? So the other thing, obviously, it's in a new area. So this is I would say a new breed of cat, or however you want to describe it. But the thing that appealed to me, and I wish you could pull up a map, is to show the parking ramp would benefit the Park District. And the thing that appeals to me is this is a collaboration between multiple parties. And the thing that I'm the most excited about was a low-income housing project. Because to me, without that, I would have a tough time supporting it. And I do think we've put a lot of effort into downtown, and I do think we still need to put a lot of effort into downtown. But low-income housing needs to be in other places, not just all downtown. And so that's that was part of the reason. And the other thing was the parking ramp. That will serve the baseball fields, the hockey arena, the zoo. It will be multiple things. The city will not own or operate the parking ramp, but it will basically benefit all those things. So, all right, that's my comments. Thank you.
I do have an image here from your packet if you want to put that on the screen, but you can kind of see at least the general layout of that with the parking ramp on the right side there, close to the arena and the ball diamonds.
And Mr. Chair, maybe the developers can come and talk about that. They're going to do this in segments, and one of the, I can't remember which entity, but one of the housing, low-income housing groups in Fargo is going to be working with them, and to me, that's an important portion of this. So I hope they can talk about that. But the other thing I have a question for the developers is, this is similar to West Fargo, the lights development, and just if they could maybe talk about the comparison, what they received from the city of West Fargo versus what potentially could happen here, if that's okay. And if you don't want to answer it right now, but I would appreciate it. I'm sorry about that if I'm going out of order, Mr. Mayor.
No, we're open for public comment, so it's good you define what you want to hear, so that'd be fine. Okay.
Sure, I can try and answer your questions, and if I missed a point, re-bring it up. I'm Todd Burney with Epic Companies, and we did do the lights in the West Fargo, City of West Fargo. It was a $15 million, 25-year TIF. Half of it approximately went to the parking ramp, and half of it went to the plaza that is open now that you hear about. And so those two things are public amenities. But part of the process is, it's like a hockey rink or a swimming pool. We can build it, but then how do we operate it? And it takes money. And so what we build into our deals is many revenue streams as we can that are probably not normal. We have $1.50 of our CAM fees. Of our commercial tenants pay $1.50 per year per square foot, which comes up to $150,000, $200,000 towards these amenities to help fund that. Our bars, if there's bars in our commercial space, their charitable organization will go to support what's in the plaza, and that's what's going on with West Fargo events. So we see something very similar to this in conjunction with the Park District. And then it's to create a destination. And while we are acquiring the 16 acres, we look at the 50 acres as a whole. And what can we do with our capacity to help with public improvements? And that's really what I want to study. The legality side of what we can and can't do, because there's no question, we'll research all kinds of things on how to help as many people as we can. And, if it's the zoo, it's popular to raise money for a giraffe, but it's not popular to raise money for the sewer of the giraffe. It's what can we help where it gets to be a little expensive and hard to raise money for. If there's areas we can help with that would be great. Matthew Pike, and I don't know if he's on here or not on the phone, but we want to have an opportunity to work with the city finance people and see what we can do, whether it's reselling that land literally to Fargo Housing Authority, whatever it may be. We do have one of those buildings. It's the far one just to the left of the parking ramp. That's right on 45th. That's designated to see what we can explore, not only with our money, but with HUD, with Joel Mansky, the director of HUD. And, we're not talking about doing it the day after tomorrow. We're talking about putting a long-term plan together so our TIF capacity can be accumulated and used with Matthew Pike and his organization. We feel there's some way that we can make that work and help buy down the cost of that living. But if we run into a complete brick wall, then we do, but we're asking for authority to work with your team to see if we can figure that out for folks like that. So the other thing to answer, for the lights, we have lots of revenue streams, advertising, marketing, different things, but we're a partner. We plan on the Park District managing the 4 acres. Our agreement with the Park District is we will have 4+ acres a minimum of 4 acres for public use. How that space is built, that's why we went to like Charlie Johnson and asked about that, because we want to create a regional destination, not just another neighborhood park. Plenty of use for those, don't get me wrong, but I think with our capacity and what we could do, if we can help baseball fields that are adjacent to us, we'll do that. And I think Dave can speak better on that than I can. So we want to take our capacity and create a regional destination and help as many, of the organizations around us. And maybe Dave, you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, Mayor. And I'd just like to thank the Mayor for the unsolicited plug of Broadway Square. So we're really excited for that to open up here later this month in December. I believe they're going to be putting the ice in this week, or the refrigeration coils and the boards up this week, and our Christmas tree will be coming up the next week. But getting out here to working with Epic companies, I think it's a great collaborative effort for Epic companies in the Park District. We're also working with the City of Fargo Engineering. There is a potential for a right-of-way project from 45th Street over 42nd Street, which kind of all goes together to turn this into what was 4, and we'll just call them Legion baseball fields and 8 adult softball fields. What we're looking at is to kind of remaster plan this and kind of court post 2 Legion. That's the Jack Williams Field that's down on 12th Avenue in the river. And we also have post 400 out there currently on the very southeast field. And while we don't have everything kind of wrapped up and everybody agreeing on terms, we'd like to possibly turn this into a 5-diamond Legion complex here, which, we could host tournaments from ages 13 on up to 18. There could be college tournaments here. Todd talks about a destination site and working with Charlie Johnson and the CVB for tournaments. This is something that could turn into something similar to what the Squirt International is. We see it as a great opportunity to redevelop our complex adjacent to this entertainment district. You've got the zoo that is relatively close. You've got the curling club. You've got the Southwest Youth Hockey Arena. And I think everything out here just works great together. Regarding the TIF district, I think that's kind of the cherry on top that just takes us to the next level. Todd said, if we didn't have this TIF district, what would we do? Yeah, we'd have our neighborhood park out here, but I think, being able to work with the city and gain some of these public amenities, whether it's the parking ramp or the elevated green space or the affordable senior housing, it's going to turn this into a one-of-a-kind, as I said before, entertainment district and sports complex. So if there's any other questions you'd like to ask, I'd be more than happy to answer. And I think another piece of this, as I mentioned before, that right-of-way going through there from Amber Valley over to 24th Avenue, it's going to be a right-of-way through a beautiful complex and a beautiful destination site. So,
Any questions, Todd or Dave? Mr. Gary?
Yeah, and you guys have already said it, but, one, you said it wasn't blighted, which is one of the criteria that we have for using incentives. 2, you guys have both now said it, the but-for question, right? You are going to build something on your property. It's the classic debate that we always have. Hey, we'll build something really nice without it, but if you see the incentive, we'll build something really, really nice. And by the way, I'm a big fan of the lights. I've been there, and it's a fantastic place. But that's not what our incentives are for. We have to remember at all times that we're not just finding money and giving it to them. This money comes from places. It comes from schools. It comes from the park district. It comes from the city. It comes from the county. It comes from vector control. And it comes from the airport. So the money that we're giving to you then would not be going to what it was taxed for. The reason we were actually taking the taxes, they're not receiving those funds. So while I'm glad you guys are developing this area, and I wish you all the best, there's no way that this commission should support this. And if this does go forward to the Tax Exempt Review Committee, the first question to be asked is the but-for question. And we already know the answer to the but-for question. They would do it anyway. So it would fail on its face right there. So I implore this commission to vote against this. This is a dangerous alley we're taking it down. These are not the intent of these incentives. And if we do approve this down the line, then we're gonna get a lot more requests just like this. And we're gonna be entrenched with these requests to do all these wonderful things with tax dollars that aren't going to the right place.
Arlette Preston?
So the ownership, well, let me back up a little bit. So the TIF funding would go to the parking ramp, the park, some low-income housing, those three things, and then the zoo. Is that right?
Yeah, and the park is the big one. I mean, it's how much do we allocate to youth baseball fields? How much do we do to amenities within the 4-acre park? You know, those are things to work out with the park district, but those are the 4 buckets. None of it goes into our buildings or our facilities.
So the parking ramp, who ends up being the owner of the parking ramp? Would
Well,
it still be Epic or?
It's really up to the city. I've told Jim Gilmore and the team that if they don't want to own another parking ramp, we can figure that out internally on how to do that. But we want to make sure it stays a public parking ramp, a free public parking ramp, I think is key, so that everybody can use it. But the details, whether it's the park district that would own it, or the city, or some nonprofit organization, is fine with us. You know, we'll use our TIF dollars to do it. We'll plow in the money from our CAMs and things to maintain it. We don't have any problem with that.
So this question is for you, Jim. Have we used TIF funding before where a ramp or facility stays in private sector ownership?
Yes, in Block 9, we use the TIF revenue, or the TIF revenue is used in part to pay for that parking facility. Currently, the city owns it, and we're selling it on a contract for deed to RDO, so we're Block 9 partners.
Okay.
In the long run, that will be a privately owned ramp. However, there are requirements over this 25 years that the parking has to be free to the public on weekends and evenings.
Okay. If I could ask.
Go ahead.
Another question. So, and when, I appreciate this project, let me just say that first. The mixed-use development, the higher density, the park amenity, all of that is wonderful. It's a great project. And I appreciate having the time to actually talk with company representatives. The part that still bothers me, and I'm looking at the picture right now, this is not going to feel like a public park. And I know you've opened up the access to, is it 24th Avenue? But nothing about this project makes this park feel public. And when you and I are gone, and 25, 30 years down the road, or even sooner, those individuals living inside that complex are going to think that's their park. And it's going to be tough for the public to actually use it, it seems to me. So I don't see a whole lot of public amenity in that park, and that's what I have trouble with yet. Jim, I don't know if you've got a comment there or not.
Well, I think that's the basic question is, do you feel there's enough potential public benefit for this, whether it's on
Yes.
the softball diamond? And the parking ramp, I assume that some of the residents will also use that
Yes.
that facility, so.
Yep. It feels like we're subsidizing, just purely subsidizing a private development here without a whole lot of public amenity.
So the question tonight really is whether we go to the TIF committee and have them evaluate it and then give us points and follow it up. So we're not approving the TIF tonight, we're just approving the study for the TIF.
If I can say one more thing, just because of our recent experience with the county, any conversation with them yet?
No, there has not been. However, I just want to point out a couple things. When we're providing a property tax incentive, where the county and the school district have the opportunity to
Yes.
opt out. In
to
this
opt
case, we're doing public facilities, and there's nothing in the legislation that allows them to opt out. They are invited to your hearing to comment, but they have not. I think Robert Wilson saw this at our tax exempt review committee, but no, we've had no direct discussion with the county commission on it. But it is unique in that I don't believe they have the opportunity to opt out on this one.
The other thing is the candidate that won the election is different than the candidate that was against TIF, so Commissioner Pollack has been replaced by Commissioner Capitan, so, and he says he's for TIF, so it may change with the county. Dave Leaker?
Yeah, and just in regards to Commissioner Preston's question about, being a public park versus a private park, I think that comes down to the amenities we can offer in that park and ultimately what programs the park district offers, and working with our partners, and Epic, of course, would be part of one of them partners, and then marketing that space too. We had the same kind of concerns of that, being surrounded by buildings, but I think you have that view shed to the west, and then also a view to the north, and I think with the amenities we can offer there and the programming, it'll definitely be a public space that people will be able to use.
Mr. Strand?
Thank you. It's been mentioned, the school districts, but this is the West Fargo School District, correct?
Correct.
And if this TIF were put into place, they won't get those revenues until the TIF is lifted.
That's correct.
And did I hear you correctly? They will not have an opportunity to opt in or out when it's their revenue we're talking about more than anybody?
Yes, that's the way I believe the law reads.
I don't know offhand. It seems to me that in Fargo, about 51% of our property taxes go to the school district, and I'm not current on that. Do we know what the percentage is in West Fargo? How much goes to their,
I believe it's very similar. It's about half.
and how many years?
The maximum is 25 years. Again, we haven't, is there a way to do this in, less? That's something I think the tax exempt committee could consider, but 25 years is the maximum allowed.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Garrett?
I just want to point out, for sake of history, Mike Williams, who was very pro publicly owned parking garages, voted against the Block 9 incentive for the exact reason that was pointed out. We used TIF dollars, government dollars, we purchased it, they built it, and now they own it. So they didn't pay a dime for it, $15 million just in their pocket. This would be the same kind of deal, because we don't want to own one down there. It's not going to make any money, right? So if we own it, we lose money.
They're buying it over time.
Yeah.
They're contracted to pay.
I think it's important to note, though, with the Block 9, the TIF didn't pay for 100% of the cost of the garage.
Okay.
They're covering any shortfalls, so
Anyway.
really it's a public-private partnership.
We can split hairs all day. And then the zoo is not public, it's a private zoo. So how could TIF dollars be used for a private zoo, I guess? I mean, if that's going into people's math right now, I don't think you can use TIF dollars from one company and give it to the zoo, which is a private entity.
I guess, again, the law talks about, utilities, parks, so if there's some joint powers between I believe the zoo is still on park district land.
That is correct.
Under a lease.
Okay, so just pointing that out.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just
Preston?
make an additional comment in that regard. That's the other piece, and I love the zoo. I'm glad we have that in the community, but I just don't feel comfortable with us starting to use TIF dollars to support private sector nonprofits even. It just feels like this whole thing is just stretching, pushing the edge of the envelope here, and it's getting into an area both with my perception, lack of public access to a public amenity, and using some of the dollars for private sector foundation.
Any other discussion? Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. And initially, despite our conversation, it's important to acknowledge our investors in our community and to thank you for your vision and for your leveraging your assets into public and community investments. I hope you don't take some of our concerns about some tax policies personally with your project. This is a whole different arena. I'm gonna come at this a little differently for the moment. I'm really worried about the state of our economy going forward, and I think you're going to see me tightening up more and more and more what tax incentives we offer, generally speaking, when I'm not sure how our future looks. I'd hate to have the school district in West Fargo. If I were sitting on the Fargo School District Board of Directors, which I had in the past, I would be fighting for these revenues for the district. But to not have access to them for a significant period of time in these changing economies, when our school districts can't even hardly satisfy their teachers and come up with adequate wages for them in this day and era that we're in. So I celebrate the project and the investors. I'm not on board yet that this is a public's responsibility to fund it in this capacity yet.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, so the main thing for me is the low-income housing. If we don't approve this, there won't be any low-income housing there. I think it's very important. To me, that's the hook for this. That's why I would support it. The Tax Exempt Review Committee, it passed unanimously, and to me, that's the critical thing. The rest of it, supporting to build apartments, I would not be in favor of that. The key thing is the low-income housing. That's just for me. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'll make a motion to deny request for a TIF for the redevelopment Anderson Field.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
No.
Preston,
Yes.
Mahoney,
No. Next item, application of property tax exemptions for improvements made to buildings. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Garrick,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Preston,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Aye. COVID-19 update. It's going to be a COVID-19 update and then a discussion by commissioners what else they'd like to do. So we have the slide change there, Ty. Desi's unable to give the report tonight. COVID cases in the state as well as Cass County continue to increase on a weekly basis. As of today's result, Cass County has 1,562 active cases, one of our highest yet. As cases increase, so does the positivity rate. Cass County's positive rate is above the state's at this point. There have been 16 deaths in Cass County since November 1st. Total deaths in Cass County of 105, with 743 deaths within the state. Hospitalizations continue to be high as well, with many facilities across the state pulling staff, closing down clinics to staff the critical infrastructure, and diverting any further admissions. Locally, healthcare systems are very busy, but maintaining the staffing has been the biggest limitation. This trend is being felt nationwide. Cass continues to receive roughly 20% of the state's testing allotment. During the North Dakota Department of Health risk assessment, active cases actually meet the critical red category levels currently, and the positivity rate also now reaches the critical red category. The governor has maintained it as a high-risk orange category along with the rest of the state. Fargo Cass Public Health has been working in the area businesses on education, restart guidance, and mitigation efforts. We had conducted a short survey recently of mask usage in their establishment, which we found was very well done. The survey contained 4 questions on mask compliance and proper use. Compliance with employees seems to be significantly higher than the general public, with some comments regarding the pushback from public and staff not feeling comfortable approaching patrons in the restaurant. With the numbers increasing, there seem to be more challenging times ahead. As a reminder, there is a 3-week lag in mitigation efforts and seeing the impact of those measures. We need full community effort over the next few months to get our numbers under control until a vaccine is readily available. Last Friday, I issued a mayor's emergency order in regards to occupancy of bars and restaurants. The governor had emergency order they did Friday night. Today you received at noon an update of those orders to sync with the state's orders and to try to clarify occupancy of bars and restaurants at 50%. We also tried to take into account that the mask mandate now has enforcement, so we have reflected that as we will follow the state in those rules. And we also wanted some clarification in funerals and weddings to try to make those, since they seem to be getting spreading out of those, is to work with the public health and work with us to try to figure out the proper amount of people you can have in your churches, and if you have an event, what would be recommended by our task force from Cass County. At this time, I felt that, Desi wasn't here, but that the commission is open to have a discussion about this now, because I felt that as commissioners, you have expressed a lot of concern in this area and have given great advice, so I very much appreciate that, and wanted to see if there's any other areas that you feel that we need to look into at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question.
Commissioner Preston?
So with this one, I'm looking at the enforcement, the penalty, or enforcement side, and I'm assuming you probably, I see Chief Zabolski's here. You've had some conversations with the police department about the enforcement of both the occupancy limits and the face covering violations. My question is, because it sounds like it's a 8 to 4 kind of phone line. It's basically telling people the mask violations aren't going to be enforced, which I think the enforcement with the penalty is not the issue. It's the educational component to that. And that's what we'll be missing out on. So I would just ask if my interpretation is right. It's going to be a phone line. And what happens then with the complaints that come in?
I'll ask the chief to come up and answer that question. Would that be fair?
Yep.
Chief Zablowski?
Thank you, Commissioner. Actually, after hours, all day long, any calls that come into the dispatch center where people do not call Cass Public will be routed to our shift commanders for evaluation. We already will be concentrating mostly during the evening hours on high-capacity licensed premises, some of which we've already have come to our attention for other related issues to enforce that aspect of occupancy, and then also deal with any mask education and enforcement if we need to go that route. So we're working collaboratively with public health during the day, but anything that may come into dispatch, they've already created a separate code to route for our review, and then if we're able to send someone, the shift commander will evaluate the call based on operational needs of the department, and then either send someone out to investigate, or if we start to see a pattern, follow up on that as well as resources allow.
If I can, are your police officers going to be carrying masks with them just to give out?
We do not have masks to give out that I'm aware of. They do have their own masks for their own protection, yes.
Okay. That might be something to think about as part of the educational focus on it.
Commissioner Garrick?
There's at least one bar owner who I know would like to speak, if that's okay with the other commissioners, since this is what the order is affecting bar owners.
Problem is that we didn't advertise this as a public hearing, so then how many people in the audience want to speak tonight?
Looks like
So then the public basically didn't get an option to do this, so it's up to the commission. If you want to allow somebody to speak tonight, that's fine with me.
if we allow 2 minutes a person, I think that'd be well worth our time.
Commissioner?
Doesn't it?
Does anyone object to it?
All those in favor of having somebody speak publicly, please say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. And, Ty, can you set the clock for 2.5, please? Actually, kind of asking for
Mr. Chairman,
commissioners'
can I just
ideas?
ask a question? So we've been under a emergency declaration for 7 months now. So how's that gonna go? Are we just gonna be under emergency forever? And the other thing that bothers me is, I don't know about the rest of the commissioners, but I have no idea what's going on with these declarations. I'm not involved at all. The emergency declaration started in 2009 for a flood when we had to take action immediately, but now we're just getting declarations left and right. None of us are involved, or maybe somebody else is, but I'm not. And to me, that's not how we govern. This is a five-member commission. That's how we govern. So I'm not comfortable. I think the emergency declaration needs to end. Otherwise, it's a boy that cries wolf, where every day is an emergency. What happens if you really do have an emergency? So, thank you.
Eric, I'm going to ask you to explain what the emergency declaration was, which this commission approved back in April, please.
Yeah, certainly. The history on this particular the COVID-related emergency was declared by the mayor on March 16th, I believe. And according to our city emergency powers ordinance, the mayor can declare a state of emergency, but it can't last longer than 30 days without city commission approval. In this particular case, the city commission took action on April 6th to approve the state of emergency determination by the mayor, and the frequently the city commission will have an end date. In this particular case, what was proposed and approved and in the minutes of the April 6th, it was sort of an indefinite extension so long as the COVID emergency continued to be present. I might just add parenthetically that just either the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, you took up the matter of the alcohol takeout, alcohol moratorium that allowed for takeout from on sale. And that had been continued, separate matter, but a moratorium nevertheless. And at that point, you sort of tailored the extension of the alcohol moratorium to sort of coincide with the state of emergency. But in any event, that's the action that the city commission has taken. It was the April 6th meeting, some time ago now, but so the state of emergency existed. And so the impact of the state of emergency is that it authorizes the mayor and others, actually, the city engineer in the case of a flood has some powers, and the police department has some powers. But essentially, the mayor has certain specified powers in that ordinance, and so yeah, the mayor does have authority to issue the executive order, the one on Friday, and the amendment that was issued today, in my opinion, comes within those powers of the state of emergency ordinance that's in our ordinance book. So hopefully that helps you.
And just let's go one step further, is funding for what happens during emergency. Can we address that, Eric?
Yes, I mean, certainly when we see that, we've seen that over the years with flooding, where reimbursement from FEMA or something is dependent upon a state of emergency existing, and my understanding is that's been the case with funding for federal and or state allocated funding for COVID-related matters is also part of the reason for the continuation of the state of emergency.
So I work with the Public Health Department, Dave, if you're wondering who I'm speaking to, and they make recommendations. The State Health Department, the officer actually could make the same orders that are made by the mayor. So I'm just trying to follow what their best advice is on this particular issue at this time. Any of the events and penalties to the bar owners comes to the commission, and the commission has full right to vote on those and decide what they want to do with those. Then it's specifically set up so the commissioners would have to address any penalties that might come out of this. With the mask mandate by the governor, we're not part of that at all, and I don't have any control at all. Why I wanted to open up discussion tonight was to ask what you're thinking, what you'd like to do, and would you like to do more? Is there something else you're recommending for us with this COVID pandemic? Trying to whatever else things that you guys think about, and Arlette as well. This is an opportunity to discuss those things. So is there something else you want us to do?
Well, Mr. Chair, just one thing real quick. I apologize, Commissioner Garrick. What I read in the paper was that if you violated these rules for occupancy, you were going to lose your liquor license. Who decided that? When was that decided?
The liquor license issue is there's nothing you have over it was the people that were abusing it that the liquor owners that are following the guidelines felt it was unfair. They said many people are 100% capacity. We don't have to, it's not a fair playing field, so it's difficult on us. But the liquor license comes to this commission. I can't take that away. This comes to the commission to decide, goes to your committee if you would like it to, but it would normally come to the commission to say, if somebody's 100% capacity, no mask, obviously violating the rule, what would you like to do about it? And then that's not my decision. That's the commission's decision as to what to do. It was said they could lose their liquor license for a period of time, 1 or 2 days, 3 or 4 days, whatever the commission would like to do is a punishment for what they did. So that comes back to the commission, does not come back to me.
So, Mr. Chair, but I read it in the paper. It said that was the potential punishment. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm the chair of liquor control. Commissioner Garrigg's on liquor control. Did you hear anything about this?
Not until I read it.
Yeah. So what in the world is going on? Who's making these decisions? Why am I reading it in the paper, all of us, all these things, out of the blue? So I don't believe the way it's going now is correct. You might be able to do it that way. I think we should all be included in these decisions. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
The liquor control item and the order was sent to all the commissioners the minute it was drafted. So you did get a copy of what was going to happen. So I apologize if you did not understand that. If you had any questions, please feel free to ask. But you do have the ability as a commission, if somebody is doing something you don't want to do, you can pull or hold their license for 2 or 3 days. Any other commission talk, or do you want the public talk?
I have comments, but I want to hear it from the public before I make them.
Okay, we'll open it up. Please identify yourself. And
Faith Dixon. I'm not going to be long because we just buried a pillar of our community this past week. And all I see is 2 of the commissioners talking about liquor and property over people's lives. Second, the disrespect. Our mayor asked us to wear masks, and 2 of the commissioners, the 2 that are always talking about respect, are up there not wearing a mask. We need to be leaders, and we need to follow law and order, which you both preach, and you need to do it. People are dying in our own community, and if liquor means that more to you than their lives, then we need to vote you out. Because lives should be over property, and it should be over drugs, which is what alcohol is. We are in a pandemic. People are dying daily. And I should not have to bury my loved ones because the 2 people that I voted in office want to talk about liquor other than about people's lives. We say, God bless America. We need to show it, and let's care for one another. Thank you.
next speaker, please.
Glenn Knutson. One of the things that you put on your mandate is this is about science, not politics. And I'm frustrated because science isn't looked at. Science about masks isn't looked at. People are given a false sense of security that a mask can do something. We've gone over that at 3 other commission meetings. And some of the commissioners even admitted, we haven't even looked at studies on masks because we don't have to. But that's not the issue either. You've got cases of positivity going through the roof, but what are the tests that are being run? They're RNA tests. They're not even live virus tests. There's spin cycles that are being done on those tests to create enough RNA to generate whether it's a positive test or not. And the spin cycles, I believe, are being run at 10 to 16,000 more than a standard spin cycle would be. And the gentleman who invented that test said it should never be used for this. It was done for research, not for trying to determine whether someone had a COVID or a virus infection or not. Science isn't being followed, and what you're doing is you're placing people with a false idea of what's going on. There are people that are dying because they wear masks. People that have lung conditions, heart conditions. There are people that my grandson has asthma. If he has a mask and has an asthma attack, he probably will die. My mother-in-law has a heart condition. She has asthma. If she wears a mask, she walked from her car to South Point and just about passed out because she was wearing a mask. People with COPD will die if they wear a mask. And you talk about science. And then on top of it, Mr. Mayor, you made a ruling, but you took it back, and I'm glad you did, in reference to church meetings. We have a constitutional right to meet in our churches with the number of people that we want to minister to in the manner that we want to minister. And we have a virus that produces a less percentage of deaths than influenza. But we constantly talk about science, and yet we don't look at science. There are people that are dying because of mental health problems. I got a lady coming to our church that went into severe depression because of the Minnesota mask mandate. She moved to Fargo so she could be free from it. You need to look at science, and you need to look at people.
Next speaker, please.
Dave Erickson. I do own a couple liquor licenses in town. I guess we've been willing to wear the masks. We wear the mask. I'm just kind of frustrated by the process and by just the lack of communication and transparency. We had a liquor control board meeting canceled last week and then had this executive order put in place. We have been following the mandates and the recommendations. We will continue to follow the mandates and recommendations. I just want it to be known that livelihoods are being affected outside of maybe that can be measurable. We've had, I laid off half the staff at one of my places today. They no longer can have a job for the temporary time being. And I don't know when we will be able to get them employed again. And that's just a concern. It's tough, it's heavy. I just want that to be known. And when these mandates are reversed, I guess, or opened up again, I just want there to be enough runway, enough lead time to where we can get our stuff in order, where it's not something that's put in suddenly, and that we know what is expected of us. We're clearly been put in a bad light. Have received a lot of the blame. I don't know why other industries aren't included as well. We continue to take the financial responsibility for this pandemic, not just here, but everywhere. I just want that point to be made. And we're here to keep people safe, but we're also here to make sure that people can continue to have their livelihood. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? We'll close the public hearing. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some questions and some comments, but coming into today's meeting, everything in my mind changed on Friday. I was anticipating us showing up tonight and duking it out about how we feel about masks and penalties and enforcement. I'd like to commend the governor for coming around and taking that issue off of our shoulders. And he made the right decision. I'm not going to be critical about when it was the right time, but we got there. And it was the right decision for the right reasons in this critical historic time we're in a pandemic. And it addressed the mask mandates enforcement issue. So I don't even have to argue for that tonight. And I'm still committed in my mind that we need to step up our engagement and involvement with the citizens. One of my concerns when we were talking occupancy in your executive order was that we were putting the burden on the businesses, but not adequately on the people who are responsible for taking the pandemic in their front door. And that's who it's coming from. So I thank you, and I thank the governor for showing some leadership, for taking a risk in these troubling times. None of us know the answers, but I'd rather err on the side of caution than not. So thank you both for that. And I want Governor Burgum to know he has a lot of support from people that are saying, good, we got this in place now. We needed it before, but at least we have it now. My question is this. If we're in technically the critical red zone now, and I'm expecting and hoping and gambling on the participation of the citizens mitigating it so that it doesn't get worse, but our criteria for the red zone calls for even more than we're doing now. And if people don't realize what that criteria, it calls for shutdowns. It calls for businesses being affected when we're in that red zone. That's where we are, I believe, as I understand it. So I'm hoping that this individual participation with an accountability expectation of them will step up our result so we can flatten this curve, so we can get some time to get further down the road for better treatments and for vaccines and for better knowledge. But so yes, we've had some differences. And you know, Commissioner Pepcorn, it is an emergency every day. Whether we like it or not, we are in an emergency every day. And I don't know what our jobs are in all this, but for those who are stepping up, who are engaging and for offering solutions, rolling up their sleeves and working with City Hall and with the leadership, I'd say welcome more of it. If somebody's feeling left out, show up and drop in the mayor's office. Ask what's going on, debate it with him, and find out what is happening. And I'm not being critical, I'm just saying this is what it takes right now. We can't talk without being a quorum, so we have to be able to engage either in meetings or at least at a minimum go talk to the mayor and find out what he's doing and put your fingerprints on it. Bottom line though, thank you to you and to the governor for stepping it up.
Mr. Preston?
And I'll follow that with also gratitude for both the mayor and the governor doing this. However, I do have to say that what preceded this on the state level and from the governor's office was basically the allowance for healthcare providers to go back to work when they're COVID positive, which was absolutely crazy before these measures have been put in place. You know, I've heard from a lot of nursing colleagues, I have that background, and they are totally scared, disgusted, angry. So I have to voice my opposition to that particular directive that came from the governor's office. Let me just ask a question here, and it goes to the enforcement side, and I hear fully what Mr. Erickson was saying, in that unfortunately what has been happening is as this has gotten worse, the bars and restaurants, because that is where the groups tend to gather that aren't wearing masks and aren't socially distancing, and as alcohol gets introduced, the behaviors get worse. But there are certainly lots of bars and restaurants that have been following the guidelines really well. I don't want us to have to punish those that are following the guidelines because we're not following or following up on the bars and restaurants that aren't following those guidelines. We're going to end up in a red zone if we don't get this thing tackled. And leads to my question about enforcement. I know we've identified at least some bars that are significant issues in the community. We need to move and start some interventions. Wondering how that is going to happen, and if there's no answers tonight, I would ask both Chief Cebulski and Desi to be reporting back to us at our next meeting on enforcement and what's happening with it.
And on the healthcare issue, I concur with you on the assessment. We really shouldn't have healthcare workers going back to work when they're COVID positive. It just doesn't make sense because you mix with all your staff. Commissioner Gary.
And John, you kind of inadvertently said this, but you said, I'm glad we're trying something. I'm glad we're doing something, right? And government is the only business that I'm aware of where putting forth the effort to fix the problem is more important than the actual outcome. Think about it. If every other profession, they look at what happened at the end. Well, was it the right move given what has happened? I tried to fix your brakes. Sorry, it didn't work. That's not okay, right? I tried, but I failed. If you're a doctor, I tried to fix your knee, but I cut off your leg. Sorry about that, okay? Because some people are so fixated on this problem, they will ignore any other problems, no matter how real or destructive they are, in order to create this illusion that we're fixing this problem, right? Because trying is all that matters So in regards to this state and local mandate, I could point out the First Amendment. I could say that if you had concerns about the mask mandates constitutionally infringing on you and then been ridiculed for that belief, well, you've been vindicated. Weddings, funerals, baptisms, religious gatherings like Christmas and Thanksgiving, these are all things that are being threatened by these mandates, and those are religious activities, First Amendment activities. That's not even going in and talking about the basic freedoms that we have, the freedom to assemble and the freedom to associate, still the First Amendment, okay, the number one. And if you're concerned about your neighbors calling the authorities on you, we put a nice little number in there for them to do that. It's very 1984 of us to do that. So I could also point out this mandate is completely arbitrary. We limit weddings to 25%. Why not 10? Why not 33? Why not whatever? Pick a number. We picked it out of thin air. We limit bars to 50%. The original mandate that came out on Friday was 25%. What changed in those two or 3 days? Well, nothing changed. The number is completely arbitrary. And for the record, on page 2 of this, it says that governmental meetings are exempt from this order. Very do as I say, not as I do. But instead of talking about these, well, then we'll talk about business. I could talk about business too. We're destroying livelihoods. We're closing down restaurants. We're closing down businesses. When people become unemployed, you increase alcoholism, drug abuse, domestic violence, childhood hunger, homelessness, mental health issues. So we're creating these new problems in order to fix that one problem. But we're trying, right? So it's okay. But instead of talking about all these things, I want to talk about the emergency executive power. Why is Fargo operating under an emergency declaration? And I'm not saying that COVID is not an emergency. That's not my point here. I'm asking, why is Fargo operating under this declaration? Words mean things, and they have repercussions, especially legally. Is this health crisis the same as a flood? Because the powers are basically the same for the mayor. There's no difference in these two things. You said it yourself, that there's some things that you can do, some money you can access, and things like that for floods. Well, it's the same declaration. But why are we treating it the same? During the flood, I get it. If the mayor has to make a new law saying, you can't be on the dikes at 9 p.m. for your own safety and the safety of others, that needs to happen right now. That needs to happen today and this minute. And it can't necessarily always wait for a meeting of the city commission. But that's not the case here. We had a declaration on Friday that was going into effect on Monday at 8 a.m. Then it got paused because the state did it, and it actually went into effect at 12:30 a.m. or 12:30 in the afternoon. So obviously, this is not a time-critical thing where we need the mayor to make these decisions for us because we're just not available or it has to happen right now. I don't blame you, Mr. Mayor, for this. This is the hand you've been dealt, and I believe that you've been doing the best you can. I truly believe that. But we need to get back to normal government, where 5 commissioners debate, decide on the issues, and then we have to answer to the people who voted us in. And not one man, not the mayor who's crowned king for a day. No more edicts, no more feckless city commission with no power. I won't be an elected standbyer, quite frankly. I'm done doing that. So with that, I move the city commission and the Fargo's emergency declaration effective immediately.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Bruce Grubb, I hate to do this to you, but what effect would that have on economics for the city, please?
I just have a couple of comments while Bruce is coming up. So the other thing is, first of all, we're discriminating. We're just only bars and restaurants are 50%. Why not all the retail establishments? Why not every place? The other thing is, for the bars and restaurants, what are we going to do to reduce their taxes 50% at least? And the other thing I think we should think about is, what are we as a city doing to cut 50%? Because I think it's real easy to point to somebody else and say, you know what, you need to sacrifice, but we're doing good. And so I think we need to think of what can we do to help, especially the bars and restaurants, because they've been obviously suffering the most. What are we going to do to help them financially? Because we are what the governor decided, what the mayor has decided. He's laying off people. There's 40% of the bars and restaurants in Minnesota aren't going to survive. What are we going to do to help them? It's very easy for us to make the call, but then there's more to the responsibility. That's just my comment. But back to you, Bruce.
So what the governor is doing, he has an economic package for the bars and restaurants, $25,000 per business. What the government, the federally is supposed to do, may come out with another package. You can be an advocate for that. So Commissioner Pepcorn, you can help us to figure that out, because yes, it is difficult for the bars and restaurants, but that's part of where we're seeing COVID spread. So it's difficult to figure out which one you would do that in. Is she spreading it? I don't know, but their retail is open, you're right. And it's hard to do that, where you wiggle in there for economic help. There's no question we should ask the governor with COVID money to put it into the businesses. There's no question if a federal law comes up that we ask that for the businesses as well, because we will lose some businesses. Bruce, go ahead.
Mayor, could you repeat the question? I thought you asked me what kind of economic impact would.
My concern is the commission is asked to make a decision on an emergency declaration, and the problem is that we are refunded or funded a certain amount. It's not a little amount of money. There's a fair amount of money that comes into the city because of the emergency declaration. So this does put some strain on our own economics.
Well,
so I just want that part.
Yeah, I mean, when it
open.
comes to the FEMA reimbursement piece, if that's a key component, certainly, and again, I would call on my finance director. That's his role. That's what he does. But that's what he informs us, is that an emergency deck, when it comes to FEMA reimbursement, is a necessity. In this case, what sort of economic impacts? I'd have to go back and research what we've gotten from FEMA, how that ties into the state and federal CARES Act funding. I just don't have that available with me right now.
But we do have $12 million for the policemen, and we have $7 million to transit. So there's a fair amount of money that goes on. And the COVID money doesn't run out until the end of December. So there's still additional funding that will come to the city of Fargo. That could be given in a report next week. Just want the commissioners to be aware of that. Any other discussion? Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Never occurred to me that I would show up and have city commissioners say we're not an emergency.
No one said that.
And vote on it and put a motion to end a declaration
Said in here
of a
clearly
state of
that
emergency.
I believe it is an emergency. The way we're operating.
Excuse me, I have the floor. Okay? I've never imagined, you know, if we want to be on national news again, let's keep going forward. Let's let this video go 1 million times around the planet and say, this is the kind of Fargo we have. Do you want to move to Fargo? Do you want to move to that town where they don't even think we're national news? That we're the hottest spot in the country and maybe the world? And we have commissioners thinking that we want to erase the declaration of an emergency? For God's sakes. I understand the rhetorical debate, but if this isn't a unanimous decision to keep the emergency declaration in place, then I say show up at City Hall every single day. Show up with your sleeves rolled up and engage. Involve yourselves. Lead. Don't just criticize.
Mr. Garrett.
I said very clearly that this is an emergency in here. I said this is a healthy emergency. This is not a flood. And to have the mayor run the city like we're flooding is not appropriate. We are disenfranchised as commissioners. We don't vote on these things. We don't get to talk about these things. We're finding out major decisions that are happening in the paper. I'm not in the loop. That's unacceptable to me. I'm taking back my control of my city, which I was elected to help lead. 1 of 5, not 1. And if you want to abdicate your responsibility to him, have at it. But I'm not doing that. So don't pretend like I'm saying this isn't a big deal. And don't pretend like I didn't just give you a huge list of repercussions that are happening because of what these mandates do. We have business owners who are here who are telling us this is what's going to happen. We can look at Minnesota and see all the layoffs, see all the bar closings, when people talk about the economy, it's not money, it's not stuff, it's people. People have jobs. Jobs aren't just some nebulous thing. It matters. What you do matters. And what I want to do is vote on things. I don't want him to do it for me.
Mr. Chairman, I call for the question.
Call for question. Roll call vote.
Could you restate the motion for the record?
We're going to end the emergency declaration in Fargo.
Garrick?
Yes.
Preston?
No.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
No.
Mahoney?
No. And just to
Mayor?
clarify something, I have sent emails to each one of you. I'll call you personally anytime I make any other changes, but you have received emails the minute I come up with anything I'm going to circulate. Oftentimes I circulate it before I release anything and ask for any questions. Commissioner Garrick, I might remind you did respond to me on one of my emails and said I will not support this. So you did receive it before the newspaper. So when you go through these things, you can criticize easily to me, but the reality is you all get notices before this happens. Commissioner Pepcorn, you know, the doors open every day. I'm happy to talk to any of you, either one of you. I recognize we're both here on liquor control, and that's why I wanted that decision to come back to City Commission. Not my decision, your decision of what you want to do. Commissioner Garrick, you said I want to take the fine away. I said that could be discussed by the Commission. So that's the reality of what we have here. I know this is an emotional issue for all of us, but we still need to go on and try to get through this pandemic. So, Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. We're back to the general topic. And I'm glad Mr. Erickson and others are here from the industry. This is something we can all agree on. I can't imagine we wouldn't agree on this, but we have no doubt small businesses that are absolutely jeopardized and in trouble trying to survive right now. And I know we have a health focus on the pandemic, and we started off with some business focus, but I mentioned this at the last meeting. I sincerely believe, and Commissioner Preston has really been doing some work and research on this, but the business community needs all of us to help them get through this troubling time. Our whole community needs it. We've had economic EIDL loans from the feds, we've had PPP loans, we've had ERG loans, and now we have ERG grants and now HERG grants. But a lot of people are falling through the cracks. Nicole Crutchfield and her planning department, Nicole's attention is almost entirely on COVID. And so my challenge to all of us right now, yes, there's things we don't know, but we do know we have businesses in trouble trying to get through this. And putting everything else aside, I challenge all of us as a commission and as leaders to really see what we can do, listen to the business community, engage them, learn from them, assess their situations, and be prepared to act urgently. And I don't know the answers, but I do know that's what's going on out there right now. There's some really major businesses, and we've talked earlier about evictions for people. We have businesses that aren't making rent. So just in a broader sense, going forward of a challenge of something to do, if we can help Mr. Erickson's and all of the community survive this time and come out on the other end, that will be worth all of our focus.
And it would be helpful if commissioners engage some people on that to see if there's any suggestions for the state with the COVID money they have left. Agenda item 34.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just
Question.
ask for a couple more things to be reported on at our next meeting. One of them is plans for vaccine distribution. I think we need to start looking and planning. Number two is the funding for all the contact tracing. I'm assuming the testing, all of that dries up December 31st. And when you look at what's happening on the federal level, I don't imagine we're going to have another package coming from Congress to fund that stuff. So we've got to start looking at that as well. So if we could include that in the report next time.
Very good. Concur. Item 34. Arlette Preston's been concerned about not having public conversation, so she has a item she wanted to bring forth.
Yeah, if I could just introduce it by saying public comment period. Every other public sector authority, whether it's school board, county commission, park board, always provides time for public comment. And we have too, although we dropped it with the COVID stuff going on. There are commissions inside the city that allow for virtual public comment period, and there's no reason why we couldn't do that. So I am asking for the motion to be on the order of the agenda for every city commission meeting going forward, that the first item always be a period for public comment, which can be accommodated either in person, such as we did tonight, or virtually as needed.
Greg, could you just stand up and explain the difficulties we have with that, of how we could do that?
Mr. Chairman, if we could get a second first. I was making the motion.
Oh, is there a second?
Second.
I mean, we talked about it first, our numbers were cut to 48, and there were a variety of reasons we stopped the in-person. And then there were some concerns initially on virtual, how to do that. Can you please explain the challenges?
If you would like to have them on virtual, we could definitely do that. The issue is that with the total number of people that we have in that room, if you have a city commission meeting, and like tonight, if you had anybody virtually that was going to be talking to the commission as part of any of the items, and then you put any members of the public into that room, once we reach a total maximum number, we're not able to be admitting anybody in addition. It's not like there's one room for people we know are going to speak as part of our usual agenda, and then a whole nother room, for that portion. If we do what the commissioner suggested, what Commissioner Preston said, and we have the opportunity for members of the community to be speaking right away at the meeting, that's directly opposite of what we did originally. And I think that could be a very good option. We'd let members know for the first, if you want to do the first half an hour, they'd be logging into the meeting. And then after the meeting is over, since they're not going to have a chance to speak again, we'd ask them to be taking themselves out of that online virtual room. They could still watch the meeting on any of the other platforms we offer, but then for the rest of the meeting, we would bring people back into that room that could speak as part of the regular agenda. That is an option available, but if we try to mix everybody into one with the number of people that were showing up to be speaking before at the meetings, that was the concern. There's not enough room for everybody all in one room.
If we go and drop the 25% in the room, you could have more people in the room and do it in person as well, could you not?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's something we're looking for this group to kind of help us with. The challenge before is we had a lot of members that were in the room to listen to the comments, but weren't at the back of the room letting us know that they wanted to be making comments. So if we could limit those in the room to those that wanting to be making comments, we could still do the public comments with the amount of room we have right now. But before, when we had the room that was totally full and only one or two or three people that are in those groups actually were coming up to speak, that's kind of how we started ending up in those problems. When we gave the option of, if you're not going to speak, we'd like you to be out in the hallway. You can still listen and see the meeting, but we're trying to save the room inside for those that want to speak. That was an option, but there wasn't anybody that wanted to do that.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know for sure why we would need to actually have them in a room. They could sign in virtually and do it like I believe the Native American Commission or the Human Relations Commission or both are doing that. We've had some extraordinary meetings where there have been a lot of people in the room, but you're right, we allow 15, 20 minutes for public comment, and I don't think that should change. So we have a limited number of people that can make comments one way or the other. And it seems like we can figure this out somehow. Everybody else seems to have, so why can't we?
Well, one of the reasons is this meeting attracts more people than one of those commissions, so you don't have as many speakers. The times I've watched them, you may have 3 or 4 or 5 speakers. This room has oftentimes had 20, so I'm not adverse to that. I think initially we did it because of the numbers that you could have in the room, and I think we could look for next meeting to have it one way or the other if you'd like us to do that. So any other comments on this?
I just have a question.
Commissioner Garrett.
Arlette, what was your thought process for putting it at the beginning?
Because that allows individuals to provide input into decisions that we're making on the agenda. At the end of the agenda, the decisions have already been made, so it's needless.
Kimber.
So I'm not opposed to doing it at the beginning of the meeting. However, we publish the public hearings for 5:15. So we're going to have to look at, do we change that time, or how are we going to do that?
So if I could provide some input there. This is, I'm going to age myself here. Back in the 90s when I was on the commission, what would happen is the public comments would go up to 5:15. We'd do the public hearings and then do the additional, if we went for 15 minutes even, that's just fine. But then if it was a half hour, and back then, John Lindgren was really loose with allowing a lot of public comments. So we would then go back to public comments after the public hearings. Either way, if we limited it to 15 minutes even, that would probably be fine.
Eric, there's nothing in state law that says we have to do 5:15. We can do 5:30 if we want, right?
No, it's just a matter of whatever
Publishing.
we're publishing, and the hearing can start after 5:15, but as a matter of our typical practice, we've tried to get
Sure.
a public hearing started at 5:15, but it is just a matter of when you publish the time.
Very good. Commissioner Strand?
See, Mayor, you offered something to the citizens, and as soon as we modified, they think you took it away from them. We didn't take public comment away, we're accommodating the pandemic, but I think we all realized there was an immense interest in communicating to the public. We had a lot of folks showing up, and our Commissioner Preston's approach, I think, gives us a chance to revisit that. And my suggestion is let's see what works, but it's good to hear from the people, but to manage it also. Like tonight's meeting, with all due respect, we really need to not be arbitrarily
Yes.
deciding one moment to the next who gets to speak and who doesn't. It's better to have it policy-driven.
Commissioner Garrick?
That's why I'm kind of hesitant to vote for this, because that's what it is, and in order to change it, we'd have to re-vote. It'd have to be whatever you have to reconsider or whatever. If we just do it for policy, like see what works best, try something, see what works best, that's what I would like to see, because then we're gonna get votes, and then there's gonna be a struggle there. So I'm gonna vote no, but I'm fine with putting it somewhere in the.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston?
Yes.
Garrick?
No.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Commissioner Strand, do you have somebody's birthday to talk?
I do, and you know, Commissioner Pepcorn, I wish we had a cake for you today. Not everybody knows today's your day, and we might have debates back and forth, but you stand tall, and you're a leader in our community, and today's your birthday, so I wish you the very best today.
Thank you, John.
And going on the list, you're lucky I don't sing, for everybody's benefit. Greg Schildberger's birthday is coming up the 27th, and our new chief, Sobolski's. He was wondering why I was wondering when his birthday is. Now you know, it's because I'll make it public. Your birthday's the 24th of November. Our best to you.
Is there any other business by the commission?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.